this off just a shade. Oop, I lost the little bead on top of my caliper. But we'll worry about that later. So, we'll bring it on back a little bit. Too long, but we'll clean that up afterwards. Now before I do the final fitting, I'm going to go ahead and rough out that box. So the first thing we're going to do is drill a hole, just like we did before. And we're going to part off this mushroom somewhere, that may be the bottom, somewhere along there, and in case we need this for a jam chuck for reversing the base. It's good. Cutting on center, so adjust the tool height appropriately. Now let me switch camera views so you can see that hollowing a little better. Okay, we're going to, so maybe you can see a little better, we're going to switch spindle gouges. This is again a 3/8 inch spindle gouge, but it's got a little blunter grind that makes it a little bit easier to ride the bevel as we get down in there and adjust this. Lower this just a hair. Take light cuts. I'll stop and take progress. Now some people will say, well, why don't you just drill a hole with a Forstner bit? Well, first of all, Forstner bits, drilling an end grain can be real troublesome. It's a lot harder to drill end grain on a hardwood than it is to, say, drill side grain on a 2x4. So it's not that easy. I still got a little bit of a nubbin down there. Now I made me a little depth gauge. This is a good time to think about using it. I'm going to put that, make sure it's fitting in the center. It's just simply a little piece of, might have been 1/16 of an inch, brass rod. It's friction fit in a little piece of wood, and then I can easily transfer or spot my distance from the outside to how deep it is. And you can go generally 2 to 3 inches. More than 3 inches, this tends to get a little chattery. And that's about as far as I want to go with that tool, and I'll finish up with a scraper. And this is not an expensive scraper. This is a repurposed scraper of some sort, Harbor Freight, I think, about a 1/4 inch thick and maybe 5/8 inch in diameter. And we'll go up a little bit. Again, the handle is higher than the tip. Don't press real hard. Now, you want to, again, go back to your box scraper. You want to have parallel walls on the inside. Why? At least for a little ways, so we can use a jamb chuck. Now, some boxes designed could open up down at the bottom, but for at least the first 1/2 inch or so, you want them parallel so it'll fit on a jamb chuck. Better, much better. Now all I got to do is go back to the round scraper to get a transition at the bottom. I find a round bottom, a round in the corners, is much easier than trying to do a square corner. It's easier to cut and it's easier to sand. Excellent. Okay, now we want to go ahead and get this fit a little bit closer so we can jamb chuck this on here and finish the outside. And we'll actually use the base as a jamb chuck. So, again, parting tool. Some people prefer to use a skew. Some people use a bidan for this operation. They all work. Ooh, using the wrong lid. That's a problem. Okay, I was using the lid for my other box, so this is way too small. So we're going to have us a short little design change here, a little short squatty mushroom. We'll do the final fit later. We just want to get real tight so we can finish the top. And overshot our mark, but we can fix that with two things. We're going to use a paper towel and a little bit of what I'd call tongue oil. Actually, this is water. Sometimes I spit on it, and that's why I call it tongue oil. But we're just going to put that on there. And that should hold this very snugly. Now we'll go ahead and tear off this annoying paper, because when it comes around to hit you, it's annoying. So I know I've got quite a bit of meat in here to reshape that, so we're going to go ahead and take advantage of it and get us a nice taper. Okay, I've gone ahead and sanded it up, and now it's time to take the lid off, which sometimes that's a challenge. You don't want to knock on it. With some boxes you can knock on the edge, but with this bark, that would be a problem. Now, with all that work I've done on the outside, this lid could be warm. It is slightly warm. Warm and cold are not conducive to a final fit. So, as a general rule of thumb, it's a great idea to, when you finish the lid, finish your box, set this aside. If you do it in the morning, at least wait until the afternoon for the final fit. Better yet, wait till the next day. Remember that, boys and girls, will be on the exam. Okay, now the only design change I'm going to make on this is I'm not going to leave any of this for a jamb chuck. I'll find another block for a jamb chuck, and we'll recover some of that lost wood that was saved for the jamb chuck. Not a problem. Just a minor design opportunity. Before we go any further, let's don't forget our sequence. We do need to finish the inside of this box before we part it off, so sometimes I have a tendency to forget that. So we're going to go back to cleaning up the inside. Now that we've got a pretty good dimension, we could make the wall possibly a little thinner. I'm going to come in here and just kiss the edge of it, take some of that rough area off. Okay, let's see if there's any changes I want to do. Yeah, I got a little rough spot there. I'm going to go back with that scraper, but now I can tell the burrs don't last too long. I've got to go back to the grinder, so bear with me. Okay, after I sharpened my tool, I thought I would go ahead and take advantage of a big magnet I had and run it through the shavings at the bottom. And guess what? I found that little part. You couldn't make this stuff up. The missing part of my calipers before I forgot it. Big magnet's a handy thing. Okay. So, I've got this sharpened up. Going to take another pass. Come around and shape the bottom. Again, do our little test fit. Transfer the outside to the inside. We can see there's the bottom of our box here, so we can make the we got plenty of room at the base to hollow it, take off a little bit as we're parting it off, and concave it a little bit so it'll sit flat, so we're in good shape. So let's go ahead and work on that a little bit. Again, I've done a little sanding. We're going to test the parallel walls again on the inside to make sure it'll fit a jamb chuck, and it's looking good. We're going to go ahead and finish before we even think about parting off. A little triple E. And be leery of putting your fingers in there. Don't put it in with, don't ever use cloth. Use something that'll tear away. And make sure it's not going to wrap around your fingers or get caught. Now we're going to go back here, we're going to do the final shape, and then we're going to come back after lunch to do the final fit. I don't normally caliper these wall thicknesses, but you want it somewhere, oh, maybe quarter-inch or so, maybe no more than 3/8. On some boxes, actually even smaller than that. And I'm making a slight concave, almost like a long cove. I think that'll give it a pleasant shape. Cut in from one side because, as I did on an earlier video on tips for novice turners, you want to cut with a grain. This is spindle orientation, so I'm going to cut down this way and then meet it on the other side. If I kept on going up here, I'd cut into end grain and would not get a real good finish. Okay, so we're going to call that good. We're going to go ahead and sand that up. Wait until after lunch, come back and do the final fit and part it off, and then we'll do the bottom. Okay, now we're going to part it off with a thin parting tool. Okay, I thought we weren't going to have to use a chuck, but I'm going to take a simple way out for this jamb chuck that we should have been able to use the scrap that was already on the thread block, but because of my little misslip and design change, we had to use that up for the box. So I reached in my scrap box and got a little round tenon left over from some spindle project. And we'll Okay, now all we're going to do is quickly concave the bottom so it'll sit flat, and being not perfectly dry, the wood will move. Now we tested for flatness. We see we got a slight concave. All we got to do is sand the bottom and sign it, and we'll be done. So all we've got left is writing our name on the bottom. I use a pyrography pen with a fine writing tip. You might use an archival pen, something better than a Sharpie that'll last a long time. I don't put finish on the lathe on the bottom. I put the finish on after I put on my signature. So we've covered how to do a mushroom box, including the sequence of doing a box. First thing we do is we do the lid. This is for an overfitting lid box. We do the lid, rough shape it, hollow it, then we do the base, then we put the size of the tenon, hollow it out, put the lid on it, finish shaping the lid while we use the base as a jam chuck, and then we turn around and part off the base and turn it around and put it on a jam chuck. And there you go. Till next time, bye.